We've been replaying God of War 2018 while waiting on Ragnarok, and guess what? It's still awesome. Smooth mechanics, a tragic villain, a still badass Kratos, and his mischievous but supremely helpful son, and the appearance of Thor at the end. But there's something else. Underneath the surface, God of War is a melodrama, and dare we say, a Michael Bay movie? How, you ask? Stay tuned, folks, because we're diving right in. First up, is God of War like a Michael Bay flick? To be more precise, is it a mythical Michael Bay flick? Michael Bay isn't a bad director, even though critics have ripped into his movies in the past. Objectively, you could argue that there are certain stereotypes prevalent in almost all his movies. There's the blatant product placement, unmistakable sexualization of women, and bad character arcs that make us cringe. But there's one thing you can't deny: he's a great action director. Michael Bay makes movies that look good on screen. He knows where to point the camera, so your eyes follow the action right as it unfolds. The man knows action cinema, just like Zack Snyder. The screenplay may not always make sense, but the action looks beautiful, and Bay doesn't care much about consistent storytelling. He actually seems to dislike telling character-driven stories. His protagonists are usually guys with little to no personalities. Take Sam Witwicky from the Transformers franchise, for example. What do you remember about him? He's finicky, nerdy, and screams Optimus any chance he gets. But what else? Yeah, neither do we, and he's the hero of the movie. But where's the God of War similarity here? Well, the game prides itself on being a character-driven story. It's about a god learning to be a father and his son learning to be a god. Their relationship goes through literal hell. The game tries really hard to convince us that it cares about the humanity of the two protagonists, but what it feels like during actual gameplay is a Michael Bay movie. A Bay movie will ask you a philosophical question and end up sidestepping it by giving you a 5-minute all-out action sequence. It tries to tell you a good story and be meaningful, but just ends up being all about the sweet action. God of War does a similar thing. While it attempts to say that the cycle of violence must be broken at all costs, it also gives you a bald, bearded, badass alpha male who will literally rip everyone in half. Take Baldur, for example. The god keeps asking you to hit him harder and fight him more violently, and you have to do it because otherwise you fail the task. You see the problem here? Well, it's not really a problem. We love endlessly pummeling Norse gods and activating Spartan rage against them, so it's fantastic, but it does point to a problem with the writing in modern games. Enter The Last of Us. Fans of both God of War and The Last of Us love pointing out the parallels between the two games' protagonists, two battle-hardened warrior fathers and their mischievous kids. Kratos is to Atreus what Joel was to Ellie, but the two games diverge when it comes to their storytelling. The Last of Us successfully avoids the problem of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance in gaming basically means that the story is telling you one thing, but the gameplay is telling you another. For example, Joel's brutal, he's violent, he's been a hunter, and in his world, if you don't use violence to survive, other humans trying to survive themselves will use violence against you. Now, while Kratos says that violence is bad and that he's left his old ways behind, the game makes you slice Magni's head in half with the Leviathan. See, the problem is quite evident. Surprisingly, the original God of War trilogy avoids this issue. The younger Kratos is angry, vengeful, and doesn't care about innocent blood being spilled, so making him punch a hole in Hercules' face feels amazing. And then there's the melodrama. The game's got well-crafted characters. We loved meeting Brock and Sindri at their workshops and buying everything they had to sell. The subplot between the two brothers quarreling and then making up was genuinely wholesome by the end. And then there's Mimir and his tales. God bless Alastair Duncan. He really brought Mimir to life. If it weren't for his tales and his exposition on Norse mythology and lore, the game would have felt incomplete. And then, of course, there are Kratos and Atreus. Over the course of the game, the two develop a strong bond. What starts out as a husk of a relationship turns into an amazing father-son road trip. If you look at the surface, the game's about a god learning to be a father to his son, while his son's learning what it means to be a god. This makes for some excellent storytelling opportunities, but the writing skids to a halt before really diving into the complexities of these relationships. It's a bit of a melodrama, and that's not a bad thing at all. There are broad themes in the game of fatherhood, motherhood, the cycle of violence, and what it means to be a god. It brushes on them briefly, but doesn't really expand on them. It gives gives you the thrill and the theatrics, but very little substance. When you look at it from a writer's lens, it's missing a few nuances here and there. Thematically, the game wants to be more than it is. It wants to explore the depths of its themes in a way that would make it super meaningful, but does it really need to? Finally, does this make God of War a bad title? The game could have been more meaningful, sure, and it could have subverted its tropes in a way that surprised gamers and critics, but it didn't. It's a straightforward tale of morally gray characters trying to find redemption. It's about Kratos being a good dad, and Atreus learning that being a god doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for your actions, but it doesn't go beyond that, and it doesn't need to. There's a reason why people come back to play the game over and over again. There's a reason why Santa Monica Studios, Cory Barlog, and the rest of the team are absolutely adored by the gaming community. The years of hard work and sacrifice that went into creating the game paid off when it won several Game of the Year awards. The creativity, the artistry, the animations, the smooth mechanics, all of these elements made a game that you just couldn't stop playing. It's totally cool if the game has melodrama, or if it feels like a Michael Bay movie. It's supposed to make you forget that you've got a life for about 20-ish hours, and it does that every single time we play it. So here's hoping the Ragnarok has more of everything we've got so far, because we can't wait to get our hands on it. And now for other news. First, there's a God of War and The Last of Us crossover mod. We compared The Last of Us and God of War in that last bit, but what if you could blend the two together? There's an awesome mod for God of War that replaces Kratos and Atreus with Joel and Ellie. Patreon user Omega Fantasy created the amusing crossover, and it even features the creepy David dude as a Baldur replacement. Kratos' signature weapon, the Leviathan, gets swapped for an improvised hammer, so you know it's going to be fun smashing David's nasty face in. We're trying it out for ourselves. Next, Cory Barlog loves being chaotic on Twitter. Cory Barlog finally returned to Twitter recently after a long hiatus, and then he caused some chaos. We love him for it though. So, the next God of War is nowhere to be seen, other than the few teases we've got, but according to rumors floating around the internet, the sequel was delayed again till 2023. The story goes that video game designer David Jaffe spoke to insider sources at Sony and told them that Ragnarok's not releasing in 2022. Jaffe tweeted saying that the game's release within 2022 is a 50-50 bet. Cory Barlog jumped in and quoted his tweet saying, "Wait, what?" and added a gif of Kratos stepping out of the shadows. Then he added another gif of Ryan Reynolds smiling coyly. Needless to say, his response sparked debate among fans who think that Barlog's just confirmed that the game's just around the corner. Lastly, Ryan Hurst has wrapped up work on Ragnarok. We're all so hyped for Ryan Hurst's performance as Thor in Ragnarok, right? We adored him as Opie in Sons of Anarchy, and when he heard he's bringing his distinctive voice to Thor, we jumped out of our seats. The dude's a legend. In a recent panel interview at the 2022 Comic-Con Revolution, he revealed that he's just finished his work as Thor, including last-minute motion capture and voice work. The interview's available on YouTube if you want to check it out, and there's an interesting comment by the uploader, Steven Alvarez, in the comments section. According to him, the voice work Hurst mentioned was for additional lines, which suggests that the game's in its final stages and getting some polish. Does this mean we're going to get some more gameplay footage or even an actual release date soon? We'll know soon enough. And that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. So what are your thoughts on God of War? Do you think the writing could have done with more work? Tell us in the comments. And as always, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this. Till next time.